Well, hello, happy Friday. How's everybody doing today? Today we are coming back to you to talk about transitioning like a MilSpouse. I'm Laura Toro with Blue Star Careers, and I have my BA benefits educator and amazing community contact guru, Jane Babcock, who is here back again to talk to us about the benefits you, the military spouse, need to know so that you can transition like a MilSpouse with your service member, but fully aware of what are some of those things, that checklist that you yourself need to know in order for you guys to have a much smoother transition. So, Jane, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, thanks. You
And,
may notice the background looks a little odd. I'm in a surgical prep room. My husband's got to have a kidney thing done today.
and I'm thankful that you took the time. I was like, Jane, we can reschedule. We don't have to do that. So that's commitment right there. Community, that's commitment. We really care. We're here because we really care. We care to share with you these resources and to share with you this topic because it is really dearly to both of us to have these type of conversations to prep military spouses, and I like to always say once a spouse always a spouse, because somehow, especially if your service member ends up in disability or with the VA, you have that tied in either as a caregiver or just as a long-term partner to continue to support him in
Yes.
transitioning into a lot of these procedures. So transitioning like a MilSpouse, again, like I said, is just a general just discussion, just very informative discussion. By all means, you need to, of course, always educate yourself to find the resources that are more applicable to your family. Our goal is to simply stir a little bit of that inquisitive mind so that you can go on and find out more at your local level, with your local county, with your local government, with your local BA center. And again, just because we simply love to talk about this discussion so that we can prep you better. So, Jane, I told you I was going to put you on the spot. What are some of those 3 to 4 key items or items on our checklist that we military spouses need to know that we can work with our service member to prepare for transitioning? So let's say I have 2 to 3 years to transition out of the service. What me as a spouse need to know so that I can support my husband or my spouse to go through a much smoother process through the transitioning system?
Well, one of the things is to really think about that education piece. Because in the education side of the house with the GI Bill, the 9/11, you have to make that decision early enough as to whether or not you're going to split up that education piece. And when you do that, you really need to think if you know where your landing zone is going to be, where you want to live when you get out, then you need to look at those state benefits too, because we have people that have, in Wisconsin, we have a separate GI Bill, which is
Ah,
totally separate from the federal. So when it comes to splitting up the GI Bill, it may not be as important if the veteran is going to be able to get GI Bill benefits for their children and spouse back here in Wisconsin.
so
But
that's
if
really
your
cool.
state you're going to doesn't have it, then yeah, you need to start thinking about which child is most likely to be successful in college and or which one wants to go to tech school and how much should I give each one and things like that. So that's one of the starting points.
So splitting and deciding what to do with the GI benefits, the
Yes.
GI Bill, yeah. And my husband, he transferred a portion, and well, actually, no, he transferred all of it to me because after he found out that he was going to be able to qualify for disability based on a medical need, and that's a whole new subject later on that helped push his transition and his retirement. And then, of course, we were settling here in California, and then therefore our kids who wanted to go to college could qualify for the CalMed. So once he knew that they were not necessarily going to use it, he transferred all of it to me. And because of his medical condition, he knew he did not want to attend school. So he said, I'm going to give it all to you, and then you use it as needed to work for your master's. And then later on for a second master's if you want to, or we can then try to figure it out to send it back to one of the kids if they happen to need it later on. And can that happen again?
Yeah, and you have other things. When you get to CalVet, that's usually, and I can't speak specifically to California, but in our state, even if you had a bachelor's degree and came back to our state and your husband was rated 30% or greater, and you either were home of record, it would start immediately, or if you transfer, if you're from another state when he entered service, then 5 years of residency and he would qualify, and you would be able to go for a master's in the state of Wisconsin. So yeah, if a veteran's rated 30% or greater in our state, they have an education benefit that can go to the spouse, the children, and the veteran of 4
That's
years.
That's really good. That's really good. Yes, because then you don't have to use it. You don't have to necessarily overcommit your benefits. You can use it for your maybe a master's or a PhD or something else if you continue to go on and on and on. Correct?
Yes. Yeah. It gives them up to 36 months, which is 4 years of college.
That's wonderful.
Doesn't matter what level of degree.
Okay, so education is one of those key pieces that you definitely need to do and decide with your spouse, with your service member. What are you guys doing with that GI? Or he needs to decide, of course. We don't want to put any pressure or say that the spouse has to push it on, right? It has to come naturally, organically, but definitely make those decisions before. What is another topic that definitely spouses can help have that discussion with their spouse about, transitioning and what they need to do?
Another thing is, don't let your spouse be a soldier. In other words, what I mean is, I'm the soldier in my family, but generally speaking, most of the soldiers are guys. And don't let them be a man and not go to the doctor. You want them to go to the doctor anytime they're having problems with any injuries that they had in service. Even if that injury was 5 years ago and they were out in the field exercise and they treated it themselves with an ice pack and maybe some ibuprofen, but now it's that knee is giving them trouble. Go to the doctor. Get it on the record. It will make life so much easier when you get ready to go to the VA. If it's not in the record, then you have to get buddy statements and witness statements and all this other kind of stuff that is just sometimes difficult to chase down the guy that saw you jump off the deuce and break your, not twist your knee. So do it now. Stop being a man. Take the time. Yes, they'll probably get some grief from their buddies. Yeah, sick call guy today, huh? But if it's not written, it doesn't exist. So get them to go for everything.
Go to the doctor. Medical reminders. So you remind them. And let me tell you a story. We have a couple of colleagues of ours that we met back in Yuma during our first station back in 1996. And very proud, very tough guy, very awesome, very energetic throughout his time. He did retire after 21 years, 22, and he never went to the doctor. And after he retired, everything, of course, started coming within short time, because his routine changed, his mindset changed, everything changed. All kinds of other physical problems, his knee, and he tried to fix all that. It was too late. With the son going into college, with his spouse trying to go back to school, get back to benefits and all that. So he was not able to qualify for any of the state CalBed or any of those services. Because he never took the time to notate all of those, unfortunate incidents that happened to him. And so he was not eligible for disability and any of those things because it never happened. If it's not, like Jane said, if it's not written in paper, it didn't happen.
Right. But the thing of it is a good CVSO or VSO would tell them, if you can find those guys that saw you jump off the deuce and a half and collapse because your knee gave out, great. They're the witness that it happened in service. Exactly. Just like court. But sometimes finding them is hard. I actually had to find a Marine for one of my Army guys during the Korean War because the Marines saved my guy's life. And it took 4 months of posting messages all over the internet. And finally somebody called me up and said, hey, my grandson saw this posting you put up asking about this event and, the guy's name. And so I think I'm the Marine you're looking for.
So it can happen.
Hard that is.
Yes, that's really rare.
But these young guys are the ones that are going to have the fortune in that they are on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Clubhouse, all these other places, so they can find each other. But boy, oh boy, try to find that 80-some-year-old. It's hard.
It's hard. Yeah, in our case, with our experience with our our friends, she has to pay all her bachelor's, almost everything, always, of course, out of pocket, which is okay. I mean, that's fine. But if he would have acted earlier to take care of his personal medical issues and document some of those, then he would have been available to do those things. So I know that was very disappointing to her to not be able to take and to pursue him to take care of himself better. It's not so much over the benefits all in one. It's more of so taking care of yourself, taking care of your health, and then of course then that moves on to the next level. So what is another third item that we need to put on our checklist so our spouses can go on and take care of it as we continue to transition?
Yeah, you need to really think about the financial aspects. Remember, none of us are going to live to be 500 years old. So, and unfortunately, like you said, these veterans are coming home and all of a sudden they're getting time to sit and be calm and, a week or two. And oh boy, that aches more than I realized it did. So you need to start thinking about those finances. What are we going to do if something happens to our veteran? What if he can't work? What if it's not due to service? What if he comes home and 2 weeks later he's on a motorcycle and the guy doesn't look when he pulls out of his driveway and disables my veteran? So, or possibly even kills my veteran. What are going to be the safety nets for the family? You need to start looking at things like survivor benefit plan, life insurance. What do we do if he's disabled by the civilian world? Well, right now, everybody coming out of service is a wartime veteran. There's a VA program called the Wartime Veterans Pension. And that is to keep a wartime veteran and his family from living below poverty. And the VA can provide some limited in-home care services, and they can provide all the physical therapy, even if it's a civilian accident.
That's
So,
great to know.
yeah, you need to start finding out what are going to be your financial protections. And, life insurance and things like that. Survivor benefit. Which avenue on survivor benefit do I want to take? Not leave anything to my spouse or leave half of my income to my spouse. And you need to make sure it's very clear before you leave service. And when it comes to the military retirement pay, if that spouse and you have been married, that veteran and you have been married for 10 years, then God forbid a divorce happens, you still have the option of receiving some of that retirement. But if you and the veteran have only been married, say 5 years now, and that divorce happens within the next 5 years, that 10 years hasn't elapsed, you don't have that safety net.
Gotcha.
So, and if you're a veteran, and if you're married to a veteran who was previously married, and he originally put down his first spouse on his survivor benefit plan, and he hasn't changed that, you're not going to get it. The ex will. So make sure your veteran has changed his survivor benefit plan to you, if it's going to be you. And that he's changed his life insurance to you or to the kids or whoever he wants to leave it to, and not the ex. I actually had a veteran that still had survivor benefit plan, life insurance, and house. They had never filed the quit claim deed. His ex had said, no, I don't want the house. But they never filed the quit claim deed to take her name off. If he had died, she would have gotten their house.
Yeah. Hector for a long time had still his parents, because when he enlisted, he was still single. So and this money wise discussion has always been very uncomfortable for us to discuss. So we never pursue further than the normal before escalating to anything else. But can our kids, for example, my older son, receive any of the benefits? Let's say I don't survive or he doesn't survive, or any of those. How does that tied in? I've heard certain things about our kids being able to, or older grown-ups being able to put in place as a second option. Is there such thing?
Survivor benefit plan will only go to children that are disabled before they're 18.
Got it. Okay. So
So,
tell me about the survivor
or still
benefit
in
plan. What is
college.
that?
I'm sorry?
So tell us about the survivor benefit plan. What is that, and how does that tie into transitioning for military spouses?
Okay. When you have the survivor benefit plan where you choose one way and it says, I don't want to leave any money to my spouse. I want to keep the entire thing as income. And maybe that's your financial need. Or maybe it's your spouse has MS or something and you know that their survival is limited, shall we say. So you decide to keep it all. Then there's the option of saying, well, I want my survivor to receive $500 a month. And we're going to get your doctors, I think, in a minute. But then there's the survivor benefit plan where you can set aside up to 50%. You set aside a smaller amount, and then they get a larger amount. So it's a
Got
little
it.
toggle.
Got it.
So,
Okay.
so you have to pick that ahead of time, and you have to make sure it's very clear. And you should pick secondaries. Now, in this case, you mentioned your husband had your parents on. If
His
he
parents.
passes, if his parents pass away, the line of heredity is to their children.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you need to, again, think about that transition point. I mean, the veteran may say, hey, my ex-wife has my kids, my second wife doesn't have any kids with me, and I decide, you decide that comfortably she's going to be okay. You may want to still continue to give it to the surviving spouse, the first spouse. So again, hereditary, if something happened to that spouse before those other kids finish school, then they would receive the benefit while they're in school.
Got it. Okay. Well, this is all really great information for us to just get like thinking and do homework and start thinking about things that we should start having these difficult conversations with our spouses as we, think about transitioning. And, again, you never want to wait till the very last, because a lot of those changes need to start happening early before you even sign that last, yes, I'm done, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Do not wait any shorter than 6 months, but you really should push him to start his transition learning a year out so that he starts to see why he needs to go and get those medical exams and everything else. One of the other considerations is a lot of folks will go ahead and they will start the transition process and they do the suck it up and drive on kind of thing. And when they go to the doctor and they say, hey, can you touch your toes? Well, they go ahead and bend over and touch their toes, even though pain starts 2/3 of the way down. So you need to start thinking about VA and VA compensation and exams and stuff. And then once those exams are done, you really need to think about, has this veteran been in for 20 years or at least 18? And should they be looking at them for medical boarding? A military member has to be 30% or greater and show that he's not trainable into other MOSs to show that he's, quote, I know it sounds bad, but unfit for duty. And in which case, then they can go ahead and be boarded to see whether or not medical retirement applies. And there's a few variations to the military side of the retirement benefits that come with that. But it also guarantees that everything is in place on the military side and then the VA side also at the same time.
Fantastic. So if anything, just start doing your homework. If you're not yet transitioning, at least a year before. I know we started 3 years, but we started with the paying off of all the immediate debt that we had. The car, the truck, anything else that would, take care of that. Now, and then of course after that, the GI and the discussions, and then now the most uncomfortable discussions, which is the health, and if I survive or not survive, what do you need to know as a spouse in order for you to continue on with my legacy, but with the benefits, but most importantly, because we still have younger kids. Now, Jane, I want to bring into your attention here, I have a question here from someone that says, now that we have 23-year-old who is atypical, who fell off the health benefit during COVID, and now we're trying to get him back, any suggestions? And we have the same problem. Our older son, he's 23 now too, and he's also out of it.
Yeah. And that is a tough one nowadays. Of course, you check and see, okay, is there any chance that if they're employed, do they have options through their employer? If not, check with your state. The medical assistance programs in each state vary, and there may be options within the state. And of course, there's the very expensive COBRA
Got it.
option. So there's so many things. Check state. The only time a child is carried on in a veteran's world is if they are disabled before they're 18, in which case that child falls under Social Security supplemental income, not disability.
Okay.
But if they qualify under that rule, then they also qualify to stay on the veteran's compensation as a dependent and things. So then if that veteran is 100%, then they fall into the insurance there. But other than that, there's not a lot, unfortunately.
And for how long would that child stay under that compensation? Is it for life or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I've had a couple of my veterans where they had a disabled child that was disabled since childhood, and they stay as a dependent. So any dependent stays on, if the veteran is 100% receiving CHAMP VA, then that child stays on the CHAMP VA.
Okay. Now, Jane, this question came in a little bit earlier from Shannon. When we were talking about benefits in regards to medical and compensation plans. But so does that apply for same-sex marriage? So are there any benefits that are disregarded or not applicable when there's, or is that depend state by state?
Same-sex marriages can be recognized inside that state where it's legal.
Got it.
But the feds, like if you came here to Wisconsin, it's not recognized, and the feds won't recognize it
In California,
until the
it
feds
is.
changed it, right?
Yeah.
But here in Wisconsin, it's not. So you run into all the legal problems of being able to be the next of kin, or ability to go into the hospital during certain procedures. Like I'm in my husband today.
Got it.
So
fantastic. Okay.
Yeah, that's going to go state by state.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you so much. So now living, because I know you are a busy lady, and we want to be thankful of your time. Yes.
Well, he's sleeping.
Our biggest takeaway that we can walk away today and do maybe this weekend as we explore, the options. And those of us, I read statistics. Somebody posted a couple of days back that 200,000 service members are transitioning a year. Yeah. So I imagine about 50% of them, or 60 or so, might have a family already. So as a military spouse, what can I do to transition and support my service member? That it's a big takeaway today, that I can help carry a smooth conversation and get it started. What's a good tip? How did you handle your transition with your spouse?
Well, like many of the spouses out there, my husband was the one doing all the finances and stuff. And so I really had no clue. I had no understanding how this was going to impact our family financially, what we had in the savings, what we had in investments, and things like that. So if it wasn't for him, we would have been on very shaky ground, because I like to shop. Guys buy their toys, I buy my jewelry. So
paparazzi. Oh, there's a freebie right there.
Approach them carefully and say, just because I want you to understand, let's talk about finances. After all, what if something happens to you? Is he going to be ready to take over the checkbook and understand the bills and everything else like that? And then, that safety net, that financial safety net. What are our options under VA? What are our options with survivor benefit plan? What are our options with life insurance? And that VGLI, SGLI transition needs to happen as soon as you leave service. I believe it's 90 days now to get that first payment into VGLI. And if it's not there, and do they have a copy of the orders? When I originally got hurt and my unit said, we're transferring you to the retired reserves, nobody told me to go to VGLI right away. Well, I just went thinking automatically I needed to do that. But then VGLI came back and said, well, we don't have orders yet. Well, then by the
Gotcha.
time they cut my orders 6 months later and backdated them, I was beyond the 90 days. So make sure those orders and stuff are in place so that you can do your life insurance. If you decide you don't want to do VGLI, you know you're going to get a disability rating of 10% for hearing loss or something, there's also disabled veterans life insurance through the VA. So you've got a lot of safety nets if you know what they are and then decide what's best for you.
Exactly.
And that will help that veteran feel safer.
Absolutely. And I would say get a copy of those orders or the final paperwork. Just have a folder near your somewhere. Don't let it, I know we're so digital nowadays. Like I'm so terrible with this. This happened and all my taxes are all online in the cloud and everything. And we needed a copy and I'm like, oh. But I know it's so hard to have a printed copy just in case. Have it in a file, in a folder, in a binder somewhere that is safe, tucked in, so that if something happens, you, your adult grown child, your spouse, or vice versa, anybody that you have authorized can access that. Because God forbid something happens and then nobody has access to it, nobody can have. It's a whole new deal having to go through all these appointments. But anyway, thank you, Jane, so much. There are a couple more questions on the comments, so I will encourage you, and then later on to come back. We'll come back and we answer those for you, case by case. So, but we want to thank Jane for giving her time this morning to continue with this. We'll come back next month with another topic. So if you have a specific topic, a specific sort of questions, please email it to careers@bluestarfam.org or tag Jane and let us know how we can support you so that you can continue to transition like a MilSpouse in the right way. And don't wait until it's like we'll come back. There's someone saying that have 6 months for medical boarding or less before they discharge. So that's playing catch up, and that's the thing. We don't want you to play catch up. We want you to have set in place. Yes.
Yeah, the less stress in your life, the better. You've got enough going on with the changes that are going to happen.
Absolutely. So thank you, Jane. Sending you virtual hugs all the way to Wisconsin, and look forward to one day going over to Madison and see my sister, and then head over to visit you on the way to.
Wonderful.
To the Milwaukee airport. But I think you're a little bit farther north. So, but anyway.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll swing down there and visit with you.
There you go. All right.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.